Welcome to How to Survive Living with an Alcoholic, Part 12. And I've entitled this episode Rising Strong after Brené Brown's Manifesto of the Brokenhearted, the Brave and the Brokenhearted, which I read in part 11. So this is the point in which you need to rise strong. Up until now, I've deliberately spent months on this, suggesting that you journal what's going on as a way of taking the stress and the tension out of you into a journal. I have strongly encouraged you to go to Al-Anon, where they understand. It's people like you who've lived with the issue that you've lived with, and they're coming through it. And there are many who have been there for a long time because they stay to help the new people coming in. So it's a wonderful program, and I've encouraged you to go there. And I know from some of the comments that you've left that some of you have indeed gone to Al-Anon and have found it really helpful, because it's a huge task living with an alcoholic year on, year in, year out. And then when you get to the point of, is it always going to be like this? And how do I feel about that? How do you feel if with the strong possibility that your partner may never stop drinking? It may never be any different. And in fact, the only way it would be different would be to get worse. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of recovered alcoholics who are living excellent, fulfilled lives. And in fact, usually when an alcoholic does recover, they make huge contributions to the community and to their city. So because they've learnt a lot from the journey that they've been on. But where they continue to drink, and it is going into many years, you may feel that you don't want to waste years of your life, and no certainty that it's ever going to be any better, and actually a strong possibility that it could be worse. So up until now, I've been encouraging you to put some support around you, to get yourself educated, to look and reflect and see, how did you find yourself in this situation? What was it about your personality that attracted you to someone who finished up with this kind of a problem? So we've had like a preparation phase. Now we're coming to the point where it's a bit of a crunch point. And many of you will know the Serenity Prayer. Goes something like, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And this is not about just saying words. Prayer is not just saying words. It is actually connecting with Source, with the divine, with God, call it what you will. It's no accident that the 12-step program that AA and Al-Anon use, that the third step is about surrender to God. Now, a lot of people go along to Al-Anon, or they go to AA and they say, oh, I'm not going back there, it's all that religious stuff. Well, it's not all that religious stuff. It's not about religion at all. The third step is I decided to surrender to a God of my understanding. It's whatever you perceive the divine to be. And it highlights the fact that we are not just flesh and blood. We are spirit as well. And any solution has got to involve all of you, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. You can't leave the spiritual out. And in fact, part of the reason why we finish up in the dire straits that we do is because we have left the spiritual out. So I'm not asking you to be religious. There's a huge distinction between spirituality and religion. And spirituality definitely is not about religion. And I just want you to take that on board. But it's entirely up to you. So going over the Serenity Prayer again, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So we're talking about you gaining some serenity, something that probably is in short supply in your life in recent months and years. The courage, you are going to have courage. It's taken courage for you to carry on living with your partner with an ongoing alcohol problem. It's probably going to take courage, to either move your relationship and your life onto another step, or to leave. So it's about exploring the options, and it is also about wisdom, the wisdom to know the difference. Now, one of the reasons why this is not black and white and it's not a one size fits all, because all of you watching this, you know, an alcoholic isn't just this particular type. There are some people who are alcoholic and they're just very quiet alcoholics. They're just never quite sober. They just drink all the time. They never get drunk, but they're never quite sober. And, you know, you probably know the sort. They don't actually do anybody harm. They don't necessarily do anybody any good, but they don't do anybody any harm except themselves. And, you know, being with that kind of an alcoholic, it can jog along for a long time because, you know, the home functions. It's just everything revolves around having a drink, and you can't plan anything because of the uncertainty of the behaviour. Then you get to the alcoholics who do drink actually quite a lot and quite frequently, but they may be high functioning. They always manage to get up and get out to work. They still manage to pay all their bills. So, you know, the roof over your head's not being threatened, but there is no family life. You know, there is no connection with you and your children, because actually after he's been drinking he's just falling asleep, and you can't make plans for the children, because if he goes off to see somebody and has a drink, well, you're not going to see him again for the rest of the day probably. So, you know, things like that. And then there is the abusive, downright abusive alcoholic, who probably is a narcissist as well, who actually is overtly abusive and actually it progressively gets worse and it becomes violent. So they all require different approaches, and you need to think clearly what kind is yours and how serious is it. And I mean this in terms of your safety. Because when you get to the stage where you're having the conversation and you have reached a point where you are going to make a decision, do I stay or do I go? Because all your best efforts up to now haven't changed anything. So you've got to make a decision. You can spend your whole life staying with them and just blaming them and being resentful and, you know, being a victim basically, or you can decide what do you want for your life. So I've been saying that throughout, but actually when you get to a stage where you're having this crossroads type conversation, where you're at a point where it's a deal breaker, it's a very fragile phase, and I know some of you are chomping at the bit. You want to know, well, what's next? There are no magic wands for this, and I am going at a pace that is about safeguarding those women who are in a very fragile situation. And you can hear my phone going, so I'm going to stop now and I'll continue in part 13. Bye for now.